Hey everyone, this is Sam here with Steve.
Hey Sam.
We're going to be taking a really close look at the latest The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies trailer. This movie is out very soon.
December 17th.
I'm very excited. It's concluding the Hobbit trilogy, which we were all kind of wondering what's going to happen in the third Hobbit movie, because The Hobbit's a short book, and it seems like they're going to have to get a lot out of this last chapter.
So
apparently it's going to be a big battle.
I will say, it seems like there's maybe about 6 or 7 pages of the actual Hobbit story in this trailer. But as Ryan McCaffrey said earlier, this is how you trailer.
Absolutely.
I've been one of those people who have said, I'm not a super big fan of the way Peter Jackson has treated the prequels here, but man, there's a lot of payoff in this trailer. I'm super excited to see see these set pieces in action, kind of pay off the build up we've had over the last 2 films.
This is and we can go back, but I just got a real big thrill out of this particular moment right now. This is the besieged Lonely Mountain, and the dwarves are stuck in here. But they've kind of walled themselves in. They built a barricade really fast as soon as Smaug left in the last movie, and they want to keep everybody out because they found all their gold hoard, and they just want to sit on it and not share with anybody.
Yeah, I guess let's sort of pick up at the end of the last movie.
Right.
So the dwarves have come to the Lonely Mountain. They've met the people
in fact,
of Lake
the trailer
Town.
picks up right there. So
And
it's right here.
when they come into the Lonely Mountain, what they do is they basically drive Smaug out, and he, in retaliation, to prove like he's still sort of the king under the mountain, he goes and he burns down Lake Town. Right.
Which the dwarves are like, hey, that's great, we'll get our treasure. And for some reason, they just lose all interest in, or they just have no empathy for the town. They're just like, well, he's gone, maybe he just left.
Right.
But they probably have a good sense in the back of their minds that he's destroying Lake Town.
Yeah. What I love
They're
about
also worried he's up on the mountain though, waiting for them to come out. So it's tense.
What I love about the story is thematically it's all about sort of the corrupting power of wealth, right? And I think that's what we see happen to the dwarves here, and that's what I think that's the main motivation for the armies as well as they come in, because here you see Bard
appealing to the dwarves and saying, come on guys,
for 2 reasons. Number one, hey, you guys kicked this dragon out and he totally burnt down the town, and also over the generations,
he brought nothing but suffering.
Yeah, the treasure that he's been hoarding up inside your mountain, hey, that's actually come from our people, right?
Yeah, it was stolen from their ancestors,
Yeah.
and it was stolen from the elven ancestors in the woods. So I mean, this dragon's hoarding gold. He's not hoarding dwarf gold necessarily.
And my guess is that Thorin is on the other side of that conversation, as Bard is saying, hey, like,
right through that hole there, so you can actually see that's the line of conversation.
Absolutely. Getting to look at the dwarves, they're super great.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to knock down these giant statues of Durin, but I have a feeling it's large siege weapons.
We have, I think we have a hint
yet
of what it might be coming up a little bit later in this trailer. But yeah, the visuals, as always, in these trailers and these movies are fantastic.
Again, this is a really interestingly composed shot. It's showing Thorin looking out from their kind of their siege protections at Dale. Of course, Dale has lights on. Dale's an abandoned city. There should be nobody in it, but the men have been essentially kicked out of Lake. They have nowhere to live right now, and they want to come confront Thorin, so they've taken up residence in Dale.
Yeah,
I love these orderly elven armies. They're always super impressive. Because these movies have a bunch of disparate armies that they can be. You see the orcs and goblins. They always look like big hordes, but the elves are always in perfect lines.
Back up just a little bit. Yeah, you see the elves there. They're there with Bard. The elves obviously allying with the army of men as they come to the mountain and say, you've got something that belongs to us. And I think
the elves come in to actually help out Bard. I mean, they help rebuild Lake Town. This is all in about 3 to 5 days after Smaug is released, and they help rebuild Lake Town, and then they come to Dale together.
And Thranduil even says, I think, at some point, presumably to one of the dwarves, "Hey, you've got something of ours that we want now." And I wonder what that might be, because there's the new character, Tauriel.
And the Arkenstone is the MacGuffin, right? But the elves in the book are not really interested in the Arkenstone, but they use it as a bargaining chip because, of course, the thief, Bilbo, is able to wile it out and get it to them.
And we see a scene of that, I think, a little bit later as Bilbo's escaping over the siege lines. But I wonder if maybe when Thranduil is there, Legolas and Tauriel are together, and Tauriel has this romantic interest with one of the dwarves. I don't know, maybe Legolas has been captured by the dwarves at this point, or she's brought him over and now he's with the dwarves, which I think could hint more at the enmity that he feels with Gimli at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring.
That's interesting. And of course we have to speculate on some of this because it's added to the original source material.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that shot of the elven archers, just all like holding their bowstrings.
It's very
back.
cool, and there's more of
cool.
those to come. This appears to be Goblin Scouts.
So that would be the fourth of the 5 armies showing up. The goblins eventually show up in the book with wargs, but I think we see a little bit later there's some sort of new war bats in this world.
So there is a cloud of bats mentioned in the Hobbit that precede the goblin army moving in. So it's technically canon, but they look pretty intense in this, and we'll see them in a second.
Of course, as with the men, as with the dwarves, as with the elves, what's bringing the goblins here is, hey, the dragon's gone now. There's a mountain full of treasure, and all we've got to do is kill a couple of dwarves to get it.
And they are avenging the death of the Goblin King.
Yes.
So they are all upset about that, and they actually use tunnels to travel, which I thought this was really cool because they don't really like the daylight. They can travel in the daylight, as we see, but they use this kind of series of tunnels it's talked about in the Hobbit to kind of gather and amass in the mountains to the north of the Lonely Mountain. Then they come down south. Here's the bats you're referring to. So these bats are when you actually... There's a couple of interesting things going on here. First of all, Legolas and Tauriel are seeing this from a strange place. I think they might travel up north in this because you can see the red architecture over there. You'll see that in a couple other scenes. I don't know where this takes place, but I think it looks like Mordor-style architecture.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Not wrong at all.
So I don't know where this could be. But yeah, the bats precede the army, but you can see these bats they have tails and legs.
Yeah, and maybe this is a precursor of the Nazgul or something, or maybe there's some sort of
it's an interesting new flying enemy that they've added that look like they actually pack a punch instead of just being like Saruman's servants, which is kind of spy. These look like they could actually battle.
And when we get to the 5th army in the books, the Eagles, which presumably is the final force in this film as well, that gives them a nice opponent also in the air that they can fight. So maybe there's a little more going on.
I think
there.
so. Yeah, I think that'll make the Eagles very effective.
So there's 3 things going on in the Battle of 5 Armies. There's obviously the confrontation with Smaug, which we don't really see any of here. We do see Lake Town burning a bit. There's the Battle of 5 Armies, and then there's this scene. Right.
Yeah.
There's the White Council and the confrontation with the Necromancer, and you see Galadriel there cradling the body of Gandalf, who
in the last movie he was captured in Dol Guldur, imprisoned, and in various parts of this we actually see Elrond here, Saruman, and Galadriel, so the whole White Council. And who are they surrounded by here?
It looks not unlike the ghosts from the final
of
Lord of the Rings movie. Yeah. Well, or it could also be the 9 as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. It's hard to tell. At least one of them looks like the Witch King of Angmar's costume on the left.
Oh yeah, I do see that now.
But the rest don't resemble the 9 at all. They have various types of looks like men's battle armor. It's really hard to tell. I mean, and it looks like they're statue-like, but then you see that they're wraith-like a little bit too, and they're blowing in the wind.
And I don't know if they're intended to be menacing towards Galadriel, or if they're just sort of standing, like protecting or observing.
Yeah, I would say they're like elves, right? That are part of maybe like the elite guard or something, maybe. But I don't recognize these straight up.
Right.
That makes me excited though. And you can see people moving in the background here.
There's Saruman.
Is that Saruman?
Yeah, Saruman the White.
And there's Elrond.
Yeah, he looks so badass.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to see him kind of being badass, because he's not like that normally in the Lord of the Rings movies. He's kind of a wise, non-confrontational.
And there you see Galadriel, it looks like, next to Elrond, sort of being comforted or shielded by him. And Saruman in the scene says, basically, leave Sauron to me. And what I love about this is his motivation is so complex here, because Saruman obviously wants the ring, and the only reason he agrees to fight the Necromancer in the first place is because he's afraid that he's going to get to the ring first.
And he wants to chase him out of his kind of territory. The forest where Dol Guldur is pretty near where Saruman is kind of amassing and stuff like that. So he wants to oppose him eventually. I really like this representation of Sauron.
Oh, it's really.
I think it's really smart. I don't ever picture Sauron in any in armor or anything appearing. So when they showed that in Lord of the Rings, I was like, well, that's interesting to see him that way, but I don't want to ever see him that way once he has lost his corporeal body, right? So I think it's really cool that they show the pupil of the eye and kind of match that up with this fiery figure. It's going to be exciting.
I love that this probably also hints at Saruman's reasoning eventually revealed in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that, hey, we just can't defeat this guy. This guy's way too powerful now that he's sort of reestablished himself. Here we see. Okay, so this is Bilbo sneaking out, and in the book he takes the Arkenstone.
He becomes a burglar.
Yeah, he takes the Arkenstone away from the dwarves, gives it to Bard, so that Bard has something to negotiate with, because he's just basically trying to make peace and give everybody what he feels is their fair share.
Which is kind of a Gandalf role, and I think it's interesting that Bilbo tries to play that first, and then Gandalf,
and there you see that same city that we saw in the earlier one, having been invested presumably by the men of Lake Town, and possibly even the elves.
They're really playing up winter in this movie. And a lot of there's a river that flows out of the Lonely Mountain past Dale, and it's frozen over a lot. And we'll see Legolas fighting on a big ice floe too, which I think is really cool.
And here he says, that you've changed. You're not the same man, basically, right? Which again gets to this idea that like the whole thing driving everybody's motivation in this war is they just want the money, and they become blind to sort of the other values that they should be espousing.
It's absolutely a parallel. A theme to the ring.
Yes, absolutely.
And the desirability of all the rings, really, that Sauron made to tempt men into being terrible people and then worse.
Oh, man.
Here's the orderly elf army that we were talking about earlier. I just love that.
Yeah.
Great stuff. So, who's firing these?
So that looks like it might be dwarves, because at one point in the story,
dwarven armor. Yep.
It's not just Thorin and company who are holding this down. He calls to his cousin Dane and says, "Hey, you got to come and help me out here." And maybe that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, Dane comes from the Iron Hills, and in a previous trailer, we saw him arriving on big mountain goats. Actually, Dane sends people, but I don't think Dane actually shows up. But yeah, it's his folk from the Iron Hills, and they, of course, are a different type of army entirely to men or elves. They are use machinations and the things that they design, and I just think it's great to see these armies come together like this. It's unclear who the elves are firing at here, but I know the elves actually do fire on the men temporarily before Gandalf talks sense into them.
There's the city in the day. Now, go back to this. This is what I like, because we haven't seen yet Gandalf be present in any of the things that are happening around Erebor and Lake Town. And
he always reappears just at the right time.
He's clearly there in this case. We only sort of ever see him in the White Council scenes in this trailer, but clearly he is part of the battle at the end. We haven't seen Bjorn either. That's another one I'm wondering about, because he's the one who brings the eagles
word.
At the
so
end.
Here's actually Gandalf riding up too to talk to the dwarf, or actually riding away, it looks like, from the dwarves. So he'll be there, and he'll be an emissary trying to kind of rile them up and say, hey, like, don't fight each other. Maybe fight these guys coming from here.
There's more of that architecture.
There
and
we go.
This shot right here, I want to see more of that.
Yep. So we know there's going to be lots of trolls and cave trolls and orcs. These are really cool looking. They're a different design, it looks like. They're just a different type of troll than we've seen before. And there's already been several different types of troll appearing in Lord of the Rings movies, but these guys kind of take the place of the elephants.
Yeah, and they've got the big gauntlets, and they have those siege engines on the back, and you can actually see little goblins on top of that apparatus. It's really awesome.
Yep. This is the refugee camp after Lake Town. It's interesting. I was just reading The Hobbit recently, and Smaug, of course, is underwater somewhere, steaming and smoldering to death. And it talks briefly about how the townspeople are scared to go over there, but Smaug's covered in jewels, and so they could potentially recover them from him. But
now we saw Gandalf riding away on a white horse. Is that who that is? And
if
so, who's with him?
In a previous trailer, Gandalf rides through. It looks like Tauriel, yeah.
Or maybe it's Legolas and Tauriel. Maybe Legolas was the one riding away from the...
Though there is a scene of Gandalf riding through this area, too, in another trailer.
But you see there, the refugees. And now just look at this guy. Like, he's got such purpose. He was a little haggard in the earlier scenes, and now he's really uptight. And I think Keeley says...
And they can re-armor themselves here, too, right?
Yeah.
Like they have a full access to everything Dwarven. They don't have a lot of food, but they have everything else that they could possibly use.
Keeley at some point says to him, I think right after this, I won't let other people fight our battles for us. And, presumably there's some sort of tie in there with Tauriel and sort of the participation of the elves. Now, this is really cool. Look at this gigantic black arrow. I missed this the first time I watched it, and then somebody pointed it out to me.
Yeah,
that's clearly the arrow. He's going up onto the roofs to grab that ballista or whatever it is that they were referencing in the previous films to shoot at the soft spot in Smaug's hide.
Yeah, they're really going to emphasize that trek up to the place where he can fire the shot.
And there we see the Master of Lake Town and his wormy friend, Alfred, I think is his name. Stephen Fry was just great.
There's a little bit of politics that'll be in this movie because people really get behind Bard, but the Master has to then drums up anger towards the dwarves,
right?
Actually, first, and there's a conflict for leadership there.
And here we are with the scene of sort of this
sort of
cross-species type romance.
Mm-hmm. Something's handed over there.
It's
the trinket from the previous movie.
Yeah. And then we see Bilbo as the bats kind of swoop down over him.
Yeah. Again, wintry, right? It's kind of a blustery, smoky scene. And then we see snow falling, actually, in this scene.
And Thranduil really upset at Tauriel, it looks like here. I know there was tension previously because he didn't want her interested in Legolas, because Legolas is the son of a king, and who is she? She's just some wood elf.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what's coming to a head here, but maybe it's more that she's advocating on behalf of the dwarves based on her romantic feelings for Keely.
Azog is back.
Yeah, he's back. Terrifying. There's also there's a baby orc coming up somewhere in this.
Yeah, I noticed that. I want to show that for sure. Here's a frozen waterfall.
Yeah,
and this is we see a battle scene with Legolas in a bit here. I just think it's really pretty though. It's just different to see a frozen landscape in these movies.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that Peter Jackson got to explore this with Weta, and it just looks really cool.
And there's the baby.
Who's this
orc.
guy?
He's so adorable. Look at him.
Yeah, we've never seen this type of orc or goblin before. It's very strange looking.
Now
these goblins look a little different too, honestly.
Yeah, they look a little strange. They look almost like hyena-like. I mean, the goblins in Mordor were obviously very not Mordor. I'm sorry, in Moria were very very fishy, right? Like a lot of their sort of aesthetic was kind of aquatic.
And it looks like they lost their eyesight and stuff because they've been in the dark a lot, unlike orcs, which are actually out and about in the daylight.
And it would make sense
Mainly
for this snowy thing to be maybe on top of Erebor or high up, as the dwarves or the goblins and orcs are scaling up the sides.
Yeah. So this is clearly when the dwarves discover that they wear the dragon wings.
Right, exactly.
And it's cool that you can see Dale and then you can see Lake Town from this perch. I just think that's great that they can compose a shot where you can kind of see the geography of the area and how these things were. These towns are all intricately connected. Mm-hmm. This was an empire or a small kingdom that everybody was together in at some point. And now they're separate. So
and they had economic and political relationships with the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So here we see Tauriel, and I'm wondering if maybe her boyfriend is hurt here. We don't see who this figure is out of the frame, but
yeah.
Maybe that's what prompts her to confront Thranduil and say, "Look, like we've just got to stop fighting each other over this.
Yep.
It's not worth it."
Look how happy Thorin is to find his gold.
Yeah.
Who do you think lit those torches?
I wonder.
How do they have oil in them?
Oh, and there, she gets hurt really badly here, and maybe this is sort of a follow-on from the previous scene where she's cradling that unknown figure.
Yep.
Either protecting him from this guy or avenging his death. And Gandalf says here, essentially, how do you think this day is going to end? And I'm super excited to find out.
Gandalf's looking rough.
Yeah,
he got up here fast. He had to move fast out of his last battle, right?
He didn't have time to freshen up.
He has many world events to get to. Here's the battle I was talking about earlier. Just Legolas battling I can't tell who that is. It's one of the orcs. But yeah, it's just look at that. It's a big frozen waterfall. Really cool scene.
That's awesome.
Good work. This is I can't tell when this is taking place, but I think this is probably about when they start seeing glowing from the mountain and seeing that they actually get excited at first in Lake Town. They're like, oh, the tales are true.
Mm-hmm.
The king is going to bring rivers of gold to us and stuff like that. There's like this whole saying, and it's funny to see.
Yeah, well, they expected it to be a time of tremendous prosperity when the dwarves came back. The Master of Lake Town even had like a little scene about that.
And they don't know that the dragon's there. They're actually kind of interested to see, well, is he going to discover a dragon or not? So,
yeah, more battle scenes here.
Yeah, we're going to see a big battle that we actually miss in Lord of the Rings, or sorry, in The Hobbit, for the most part, because of this little guy who he can. So Bilbo puts on the ring in The Hobbit to escape danger.
The fighting.
Yes. They make it clear about that, but he also passes out. And we don't see any of the fighting.
Right.
So we're going to see it in this movie, luckily. But Tolkien uses that conceit a few times. Merry and Pippin both pass out in large battles in Lord of the Rings, and we don't see those battles. So at least Peter Jackson's able to construct those battles based on who's showing up to fight. But there is a reference in The Hobbit, kind of indirectly, to the ring. A magic ring is useful to avoid getting your head lopped off by by a troll, but it's maybe not useful for battling an entire army. So it talks about how he kind of just escapes.
Sure, yeah.
I think that's a reference to just kind of, it's not really his battle.
It also creates a complication because nobody can find him once the battle's over because he's been hurt, but I think he still has the ring on,
yeah,
right?
He's invisible. Yeah. It's cool. I think that's it. The trailer. I don't know how much more of this we're going to see before the movie because it's so soon, but I'm really excited to see it. If we get anything else in, we're of course going to analyze it a whole lot and bring you any latest Hobbit news we might have. So please keep checking back to IGN. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you, Sam.